Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV interview. Today I'm joined by Mike Nichols. He's the Vice President and Product Lead at Elastic Security. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for taking the time. Now, just to give everyone a refresher, I'm sure there are people watching who know all about Elastic Security, but can you please recap the company for us and tell us how it helps customers?
Sure. Let me start a little bit about Elastic itself before we get to the security side. So Elastic is about 10 years young, and you probably know us more from the ELK stack acronym, the Elastic Log Stash Kibana acronym. It's always been sort of the best place to put your data when you want to find an answer fast. We've sort of a massive data analytics platform where people have used us for many years to build their own technologies on top of us, to utilize us as an additional layer of their data analysis. And a few years ago, we started to build these pillars that worked on top of that sort of classic ELK stack to provide an out-of-the-box capability for our customers. We saw many people were building us typically sort of as an augmentation to their SIEM. They were adding us as a layer because SIEMs were either really slow or really expensive, or maybe a combination of the two. And so what Elastic Security started as was that sort of out-of-the-box security analytic experience for our customers. And where I came from, I actually joined via an acquisition. I was at a company called Endgame, which was an endpoint security company founded in the Washington, D.C. area of the U.S. We've rolled that in. So now we sort of included in our SIEM and endpoint, kind of moving into that, if you know the acronym soup that is a security XDR space for extended detection response. And then recently we've added a cloud security component as well to add that same type of prevention, detection, response into cloud ecosystems. Your native AWS, GCP, Azure, but also containers, Kubernetes, and all those new flavors there. So yeah, we still are the best place to keep and house and analyze all your data, but also have this out of the box experience in security to solve those sort of market challenges like security analytics, endpoint security, cloud security.
And mentioning cloud, obviously the world has rapidly transformed to the cloud, even more rapidly than we did before because of the digital transformation that was required. And so, what are some of the trends that you see in the current cybersecurity landscape today, globally and in Australia?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a common question actually this week. This is my the tail end of my week in Australia. So I flew in just earlier on Monday. I've been in Canberra, Sydney, now I'm in Melbourne, talking to many different CISOs in public sector and commercial. And before this, I was just in the UK for a joint UK-US conversation, and I'm based in the US. And I think the trends are. I was saying to people, I don't know if if it makes you feel better to know that everyone feels the same pain, but they're very relatively common. And that's the kind of a couple layers. You mentioned the digital transformation. COVID unfortunately moved us to move things to the cloud so quickly and have to prioritize operational capability over security in many cases. But what it also did is it siloed our data even more than it was. We use, maybe Google for our mail. We use Slack for our messaging. We use Okta for our authentication. So we started to incorporate more and more SaaS applications on top of us moving our infrastructure up the cloud. And also our employees went all over the world, right? Our employees went to distributed locations. So we've always talked about the perimeter being dead in security. It's really, really dead now. It may be dead and buried. And so the problems people face is that siloed data problem, right? I need to figure out if it happened, but also what did it do? And the ability to do what we call root cause analysis is really, really hard in this new ecosystem, because where's that data? How do I know what was authenticated in Okta? Do I call Okta to get that information now? And so that's led to this idea of how can we get that information into, we kind of like to call it sort of the operating system layer of the operations center. How can I get that single data fabric that has all my data from all my relevant pieces of information? And how can I have that be actionable so that my teams can dig in and find the answer to, did it happen? What did it do? And that shouldn't take a month or 6 months. It should take a few seconds. So that's the trend one. And then the other trend, which I'm sure you've heard many times from people previously on this interview, has been the skills challenge that we face, right? That, okay, I have all that data in one place. Who does it? Who runs it for me? And in that case, I like to speak a lot about this idea of, the first thing I say is that business-to-business applications are typically terrible. They've been terrible for a long time. They're very utilitarian. And I think that, for the burgeoning workforce that's in the market today, and for bringing more people to security, we have to make it more intuitive. We have to bring almost a consumer focus of user experience to our business applications. And so those have been the big two trends. How do I get more people that understand the security domain? And how can I get my data in a place where if I have those people, they can actually solve the problems and give me the assurance if a problem actually happened in my environment.
And it makes me think that, when you're talking about data being sort of, I guess, re-siloed, I mean, digital transformation was supposed to break all those silos down, bring all the data together. I mean, the technology industry is all about centralization, decentralization, and the waves in between that. And so, I mean, I've read you stating that cybersecurity is a data problem, and you just more or less described it right there. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, you're exactly right that the vision was, hey, data is available all the time now because it's in the cloud. But if you notice, if you have a cloud vendor, you can get all the data in there you want, right? It's really, really easy. Try to get it out and watch them bill you at the end of the month for this really big cost of pulling data out of the system. And so that made people have to try to get this bet of like, okay, now I'm on this vendor only. Can I get all my data there so it's less expensive to pull it out and analyze it? And unfortunately, it's really hard to get just one vendor in the cloud, right? You have you decide to be an AWS focused environment, but this product uses Azure, this product uses GCP, and oh, by the way, I still have on-premise information I need to maintain that maybe can't go to the cloud. So it always ended up in a situation where I had to backhaul data somewhere, and now I'm paying for data duplication. I'm paying for that transfer fee and transfer cost. In Elastic, the view we took was, what if I could bring my questions to the data? What if I could keep my data in AWS and keep it in GCP and keep it in Azure and keep it on premise, and then ask my anomaly detection machine learning models or my threat hunting analysis or my detection rules, they reach out to where the data is and only pull back the answers when it triggers, give that back to that central location. So in essence, the analyst looks in one place. They don't know they're federating out to many other locations, but they're able to search that information across. And not only does that solve the cost challenge, but many customers of ours are global nationals that have data sovereignty challenges as well. Like my data must maintain in the UK because of GDPR. It must stay in the US. And so this also helps with that challenge where you can maintain that data. We always say the data has gravity, right? So we can keep the data where it is and then bring your search to the data to get those answers. And so I think that even in the cloud world, now you're just bringing your search to someone else's data center that happens to be in a cloud somewhere.
Yeah. Now, I've heard of companies, trying to talk about how you've had this data lake, you've got to bring all the information in, duplicate it, and other companies have sort of tried to do the same thing where they're now going to where the data is, but presenting you one sort of view into that data, which seems to be the smarter way of doing things. And that data sovereignty issue is a great reason why you can't just pull it all together, but you also want that redundancy.
Exactly.
But then with security measures, how do you balance preventative versus responsive security measure in an increasingly hostile landscape of 0 days and other emerging threats that we don't even know about yet?
Yeah, and the other, I skipped a third trend in an earlier question, which relates to this, which is that we see nation-state attacks that get instantly operationalized into criminal groups. Because look at the war in Ukraine. Someone develops, this new ransomware attack that starts to wipe out its systems. Once that's out there, that technology is now freely available. It's adopted in criminal groups and pushed down. So even commercial companies, small businesses have to deal with a potential nation state developed attack, even though they're not the target, because there's sort of a collateral damage in that case. And, I think the only way, of course, the best response is to have zero response. So prevention is key. So one of the things we've done in Elastic is the core of our technology is that central detection piece we mentioned. But we also build that first-party endpoint and first-party cloud edge-based preventative solution if you want to toggle it on. So the idea is, of course, we'll collect the data, we'll detect the threats that are there, and then we'll offer you, once we gain your trust and once you feel like you're ready, you can then switch a node into prevention mode and actually stop that, bring that response time down to zero. And the secret is no one can prevent everything, right? So the fact that we have that central detection layer means that we have another crack at that piece. So if prevention for some reason does miss, or if you have it off in some locations, you have that central analytic layer that can help find that threat, and still your team hopefully can respond fast enough to stop damage and loss to the organization.
Now, cybersecurity in digital systems has long been associated with secrecy and obscurity as its primary form of defense. And, security by obscurity is never, never a winning long-term strategy. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
This is a big one for Elastic. We actually have a lot of push here from papers and campaigns. We really, really believe in openness. The company by itself was founded as an open source company. Our code is developed in the open. Our people are in open communication forums. Like our developers talk to everyone you want to via Slack. And when we moved into security, we carried that same ethos. We actually took all of our detection rules, at this point, 1,000 and some odd, rules that are mapped to MITRE's attack framework and put them in the open, in GitHub, publicly available. We talk to, we collaborate with community there. And the reason we did that is because, of course, you'll hear the FUD of, well, doesn't the adversary now know what you do? They knew well before we put it in the GitHub. Like, they have every piece of technology, whether they purchased or stolen it. They know what we're doing. The challenge we face, and you look at Log4j as a great example of this. If you let's look across Australia. How many companies, when Log4j hit, how many companies had their CISO come to them and say, did this happen to us? And they went, well, how do I find it? And then they started churning on what's the detection rule, what's the threat hunting rule. And you multiply that person hour, person year times N number of companies, but they were all looking for the same thing. But we don't share, we don't communicate, we don't collaborate at that level. If we were able to, your time is spent now on finding the problem. You're doing the detective work, not on the data munging in the beginning. And as we also talked about, nation state activities hitting lower leveled companies or smaller companies, small business and medium enterprise, they might not even have a security person at all. How do they go look for Log4j? Is it the IT person who's also helping customer support tickets, who's also unlocking people's email addresses or whatever, now has to also find this massive attack? So we think the only way that the whole world can rise above, can bring cybersecurity to a discipline, is to really democratize cybersecurity in the first place, to make this knowledge not the crown jewels, right? To distribute it to everyone so that the defenders have a better benefit. And again, like I said earlier, the adversaries have been opening up their technologies at a faster rate and been far more effective than we have in defense. We have to adopt that same idea of sharing how we find threats, how we can, detect and stop these things in the environment so that we can have our people focus on the business impact and business risk. And again, not on that data munging, data analytic layer of, well, how do I even find this? Is it an underscore? Is it an asterisk? What do I look for?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how does Elastic collaborate with the wider DevOps communities to ensure that open security is accessible for all? I mean, you mentioned GitHub and there's other things, but and Slack, but I mean, you can't have every developer on Slack.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a few things there. One is, of course, we do, everything we do is in the open, so you can easily join us and chat and ask about it. But another thing we believe in really deeply is that it's your data, right? So what that means is if you were to use us as your solution and bring your data to Elastic and we start working on it, and you decide I want to go somewhere else, it's an open, it's your data, right? We don't hold you hostage. You can do what you want. And a key to doing that was to build an open source schema to bring that data into the ecosystem. So we created an open schema we call Elastic Common Schema. It normalizes data to a sort of domain level. So bring in anybody's endpoints you want, it's host-based data. Anybody's network data you want, it's network data. And so that allows you to bring your information in from any source, custom source, or sources that we have pre-built integrations for. And it's normalized and standardized so that you can instantly access it for dashboards, rules, reports. That means you can, again, you're not locked into a vendor. You decide to move. It's just an open schema. Anybody else can implement it. And it also means that you can write something once and repeat it, right? So if you decide to change to a best in breed, let's say you have a firewall technology and you say, you know what, I'm done with this one, I want to move. I've been in this situation before as a defender where I had to then rewrite all the rules I wanted into this new vendor language. And in this case, you don't worry about that. You've written them in a open schemaed, network-focused domain detection rules. You change the data source. You do one thing, which is translate that data to the normalized schema. Normally, we already have that integration for you, so you don't even have to do it. You translate that data, and now all those rules, all those machine learning models, all those dashboards, they just work, right? It just works out of the box. And so it's far more flexible for you to change the edge-based protection layers you have to best-in-breed technologies because you've built from the foundation an open framework that you work upon.
Yeah. One thing that I always like to ask about, I always like to think that your customers are your best R&D division. So are there any features and benefits that you've introduced thanks to customer demand?
Boy, so many. I'm really lucky in Elastic. We have a huge number of customers. It's been around for 10 years. We started with, again, this ability to have this model, which was freely available on top of a commercial model on top. And so we have a massive amount of people out there that are using our product. And that means I have a huge amount of feedback, more than I've ever had in product development in my life, where I had, maybe a handful of customers to talk to. We also have a really hungry group of people that want to try new things. So even I get to give an example. When I first joined Elastic, and I was told the story from the team, coming on board from the endgame side, where we had, a smaller number of customers, it was more, kind of focused. They said, hey, get ready for feedback. So we started developing, and we were developing in that open GitHub branch. And I had a user ask me about something that I hadn't shipped yet. And they said, "Hey, well, it'd be cool if you could, change this thing here to meet the needs." How do you have access to that? Well, they just went to GitHub, they built off the main branch, and they had stood it up in their environment and tested it out because they were so excited to look to see what we were building. And that was pretty eye-opening for me. Now you're like, wow, I can get instant access from a global reach of customers in all different segments across the world. So the answer to the question is yes, there's probably far too many to count that are there. Usually, I get a lot of great user experience improvements. Things like you introduce some great new feature, but then they realize when someone starts using it at scale, they go, if you actually put this click over here, I wouldn't have to move my mouse from the left to the, and that little bit matters when you're analyzing hundreds of alerts a day.
Yeah.
And so there's been so many just minor or maybe major, but minor improvements to that user experience that have really paid dividends for all of our customers. That it's, again, it's too much to count, but I'm really a huge believer in the community and the fostering of this community that Elastic has developed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, solving pain points is one thing, but whether they're really big ones or even little tiny ones, it all makes a difference. And if you can smooth it out for people, well, no wonder they're going to be happy. So, Mike, I know we're running out of time, but what are some of the exciting updates that you and Elastic have on the horizon for clients? Or is it all still a bit top secret?
That's a good thing there's no top secret here at Elastic. I think that the thing that I'm excited about, and you mentioned cloud earlier, and it's the fact that we are going where our customers are. We have we've had recently a great number of cloud security enhancements we've released. We're about to put even more out as we move into RSA. We're about to have even more continued cloud focus. Expanding our protection capabilities in the containerized environments and in Kubernetes, expanding our ability to help you find that sort of the base of the pyramid where you have your misconfiguration challenges that are in cloud, helping those be one-click automated detections and preventions in your environment is a key feedback for us. And the reason we moved there, I guess I mentioned, is we had this great endgame tech. I think it's great because I came from endgame, but this great endgame tech, which is like laptops, desktops, and server ecosystems, but really focused on at the time was mostly in your premise. And in Elastic, we have a massive base of logging customers on Linux, taking, help me with my uptime availability, and then go back to that transformation, the digital transformation. Now their infrastructure is in the cloud, and they're saying, boy, it'd be great if you could help me with these same type of preventions and technologies on this cloud ecosystem. And so we went and found some great experts, brought them on board, joined the Elastic team. And I think we've had a steady drumbeat over the past year of really exciting cloud security enhancements. And RSA, I won't say it's top secret. I'll tell you a little bit of it. But at RSA, like I said, we'll have some more of that focus here on the containerized sort of future deployment technologies. Some really cool announcements we're going to have there about what's coming for our customers.
Wonderful. Well, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask a couple of questions about you. And I just want to start by saying, can you please share a memory of your first computer?
So I love these questions that you ask. Yeah, so my first, so I have to go back in time. My father had his own photography business when we grew up, and most of the invoicing and all the work we did was on I don't know, many people remember this, but the push actual typewriters, right? Literally, I make a mistake, I had to get my whiteout out and white out the letter and retype it, and I was maybe it's not quite child labor, but I was helping him in this. I remember when we migrated to a computer. It was like, I think it might have been 3.1 Windows, but it was like very early version of Windows computer that we had to set up, and we were able to type. And if you made a mistake, there was a backspace button, and it was like my mind was blown. Wow, and then I could save a template, and all I had to do was go in and edit like the few fields I needed, and not retype the entire thing every time. Because it was really kind of an amazing experience that we had. But boy, it was. I think the floppy disk we had to install it was like 2 boxes worth. And I remember just sitting there, overnight one night with my dad. He's so excited, but just click, and you would just sit. He's like, that was my job because I was a kid. Tell me when it's done spinning and I need to inject the next disk or whatever. Okay, I'll just sit there and stare at it. But yeah.
Those were the days. And Elastic is also now a security company, as you explained. So, can you share a memory of your first encounter with a virus or malware all those years ago?
Yeah, I can tell you where I got hooked. So I was former U.S. Army. I joined September 12th of 2001, so right after 9/11, I signed up. And I was deployed in the Army with the Air Force to what's called the Combined Air Operations Center. So it's the place in country that sort of runs all the air operations in a theater in an area. And while I was there, one of my side duties, besides, so I was an intelligence analyst. My job was to, understand what's happening on the battlefield, report it to others. And I also, maybe because I was young, was helping with my system admin to help, triage and take care of all of our systems. And I started, listening to very, very early day podcasts back then. And I heard one on zombie botnets. And I was so taken away by the fact that there was an ability to take over someone else's system and then leverage that system in an attack against others. And like just going from hearing about it to learning how it's done to then pen testing. It wasn't even a pen. I don't think that was a word at the time, but like doing it on my own and trying it. I just got completely fell in love with cybersecurity. And then, since then, every day you just learn about something new. It's like such an amazing, maybe not amazing because it's pretty scary what happens out there, but it's this continuous learning of what's taking place. But yeah, I remember botnets hooked me early days into, it was 2002, into cybersecurity. And since then I've had the bug, so to speak, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, it's definitely not Groundhog Day in technology. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Now, my second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Yeah, I can tell you. So my former CEO at Endgame, who was then our GM in Elastic and is now the first U.S. ambassador for cybersecurity in the United States, Nate Fick. As I was progressing through my career, and he had moved me up into a leadership role, I am a passionate guy. Sometimes my passion could be construed as aggressive in some ways. He gave me this great book that's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and I digested that. Probably first I looked at it and thought he was insulting me, and then I stepped back and read it and realized it was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in my career, which was that just because something worked for you in a previous place, every place is new. Time also changes, and by the way, you mentioned you change. And so it really helped you to understand how to adapt your style to still take what made you special and make you unique, but adapt it over time into the new environments and sort of grow yourself. And that was so that I always think to myself, what got you here won't get you there. It's it's a good mantra. It's a great book. And yeah, credit to Nate Fick for really helping me become the leader that I am today.
Yeah. Well, it also makes me think that the thinking that got you here, or the thinking that was part of the solution then, isn't the thinking that's going to solve future solutions, future problems necessarily. You've got to evolve and adapt and change. And if you get stuck, you'll be stuck.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you probably heard people say like, well, that's not how we do it here. And that mentality, that frozen, especially like you mentioned in cybersecurity, where it's always evolving, that mentality does not work. You have to be open to the fact that you might be wrong and there might be a better way to go about things.
Absolutely. You've got to be agile in life, not just in programming.
Exactly.
Development. Yeah. So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers and to your current and future customers and partners?
So I think if I had to give one thought closing, and it goes back to the openness side, I think look at what you're using and ask yourself, am I locked into this group of technologies because they're solving my problem or because they're holding me hostage? Am I really freely able to move and change and, as you mentioned, be agile and adapt to the newer ecosystems that might be out there? If you're not, whether it's us or someone else, I think the core thing when I talk to CISOs, and they know this, but I like to remind them that they have all the power. You have all the power over a vendor. Demand to open up and unlock your data, to use open standards when it comes to how you communicate and share information. Because only then are you able to really truly be free of the vendor chains that are there, and actually find the best solution for your environment that solves your needs and your customer needs.
Well, Mike Nichols, Vice President and Product Lead of Elastic Security, thank you very much for taking the time. It's been a great discussion, and I do hope we can speak again in the future.
It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.